They thought they were leaving for something better. Bigger contracts, brighter cities, fresh starts. But what they got was the opposite. From millionaires to convicts, from Pro Bowlers to forgotten names, this is what happens when you walk away from the Raiders and the whole world turns against you. You won't believe who shows up on this list and what they lost when they turned their backs on silver and black. In the high-stakes world of the NFL, walking away from a team can change everything. For most players, it's just business. But for some, especially those who left the Raiders, the consequences were catastrophic. In this video, we're going to uncover the dark side of walking away from the Raider Nation. 10 players who once wore the silver and black and saw their careers fall apart after leaving. Some faced injuries that ended everything. Others got caught up in scandal, crime, or shocking public meltdowns. You'll hear about stolen charity money, ruined reputations, wasted talent, and even prison time. This isn't just about football. It's about ego, consequences, and the brutal price of poor decisions. Some of these men were legends in the making. Now they're cautionary tales. So why do so many fall apart after leaving the Raiders? Was it bad luck, bad choices, or something deeper? Stay with us because each chapter reveals a more shocking downfall than the last. And trust me, you won't see the final name coming. Welcome to History of Raiders, the place where forgotten legends rise and fallen heroes are never ignored. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the dark corners of Raider history. JaMarcus Russell. It's not every day a former NFL quarterback gets banned from his old high school, but JaMarcus Russell managed that after allegedly stealing a $74,000 donation meant for student athletes. The money, intended to support the school's athletic program, vanished. The scandal was shocking, but for those who knew Russell's story, it felt like just the next chapter in a long, disappointing fall from grace. Years earlier, he was hailed as the next big thing. In 2007, the Oakland Raiders made him the #1 overall draft pick, signing him to a massive $61 million contract with over $30 million guaranteed. At 6'6" and over 260 pounds, with a cannon for an arm, he was expected to become the franchise's savior. But things started going wrong almost immediately. He held out from training camp for more money. When he finally showed up, he seemed out of shape and mentally unprepared. Coaches complained about his lack of effort and poor study habits. There were rumors that he barely watched film and often skipped workouts. On the field, his performance was just as disappointing. In 3 seasons with the Raiders, Russell threw just 18 touchdowns against 23 interceptions. He struggled with accuracy, decision-making, and leadership. Fans grew frustrated. The media turned on him. Eventually, so did the team. By 2010, the Raiders had seen enough. They released him, despite having invested tens of millions of dollars. Attempts at a comeback never stuck. He faded from the league quickly. One of the fastest falls for a #1 pick in NFL history. But the real shock came years later, when reports surfaced that Russell had taken thousands from his old high school's booster fund. The school banned him. The story made headlines again, this time not for his arm strength, but for a financial scandal. A quarterback once expected to carry a franchise was now a public embarrassment in his own hometown. And JaMarcus Russell's name became more than just a bust. It became a warning. Warren Wells. The fall of Warren Wells wasn't just a football story. It was a personal tragedy played out in public. After blazing through the NFL with speed, talent, and highlight-worthy performances, his life unraveled just as quickly. Legal trouble became a constant shadow. In 1971, Wells was convicted of a probation violation and sent to prison. Alcoholism took root, deepening his problems. When he finally got out, the game had moved on. He was just 28 years old, but his career was already over. He would never play another down in the NFL. The most painful part? He was at his peak. Warren Wells wasn't just a bench warder. He had just recorded 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons with the Oakland Raiders. In 1969, he led the entire AFL in receiving yards and touchdowns. He was named an AFL All-Star and a Pro Bowler. For a few bright years, he was one of the most feared deep threats in football. Defenders couldn't match his speed. Quarterbacks trusted him. Fans loved him. But off the field, he was spiraling. His problems didn't start after football. They started during it. He was arrested multiple times for alcohol-related incidents and violent behavior. The Raiders tried to keep him on track, but the damage was growing deeper each year. By the time he violated his probation and was sent away, it was clear. Warren Wells was no longer just a rising star. He was a warning sign.
His story doesn't end with a comeback or a second chance. Unlike many athletes who find redemption, Wells disappeared from the league quietly, with headlines no longer praising his stats, but reporting his arrests. And though Raider fans still remember what he did on the field, the world outside the stadium moved on without him. His fall wasn't loud. It was slow, sad, and final. Anthony Smith. When the headlines first broke, few could believe it. Anthony Smith, once a towering presence on the Raiders' defensive line, now stood trial for not one, but 4 murders. The case shocked even the most hardened sports fans. The details were brutal. Kidnappings, torture, execution-style killings. His fall from grace wasn't just steep, it was horrifying. Smith was first implicated in 2008 when his fingerprints and DNA linked him to a murder involving a man beaten, burned, and left in a rental car. But that was just the beginning. More charges followed. Prosecutors described him as a man living a double life, NFL fame on one side, cold-blooded violence on the other. By 2015, he was convicted in 3 of the 4 killings. To Raiders fans who remembered him in the 90s, it didn't make sense. Smith had shown promise. Drafted 11th overall in 1990, he quickly made his mark as a defensive lineman with power, speed, and grit. He racked up 57.5 sacks over his career and was a reliable force for the Raiders over 9 seasons. Teammates described him as intense but focused. He wasn't a superstar, but he was solid, dependable, and respected. No one saw this coming. After leaving the NFL, Smith drifted. His name faded from sports news, but surfaced again in crime reports. Former teammates kept quiet. Fans wondered what could have driven a former pro into such darkness. Was it something lurking beneath the surface during his playing days? Or did the silence after retirement echo too loudly for a man who had lived in the roar of the Coliseum? Whatever the cause, the outcome was undeniable. A man once paid to crush quarterbacks had in the end destroyed lives, and his own. Brandon Facyson. When Brandon Facyson left the Raiders and signed with the Indianapolis Colts, it looked like a smart move on paper. He was reunited with defensive coordinator Gus Bradley, someone who had trusted and elevated him during his time in Las Vegas. The system was familiar. The expectations were clear, but what followed was anything but growth. His production plummeted. His performance on the field was inconsistent. His presence barely registered compared to the flashes of potential he once showed. By the end of the season, critics were calling him one of the biggest disappointments on the Colts roster. He went from a reliable option to a liability in coverage. Missed tackles, blown assignments, and a lack of playmaking haunted every snap. The drop-off was hard to ignore, and for a cornerback whose career was supposed to be on the rise, the fall came fast, and it came hard. But just a season before, things looked very different. In 2021, Facyson had found his rhythm in Las Vegas. After being elevated from the practice squad, he made an immediate impact in the Raiders' secondary. He wasn't a shutdown corner, but he was physical, aggressive, and knew how to play within the system. Under Gus Bradley's direction, he delivered solid performances and became a trusted name on the defense. That season gave him the exposure he needed. Teams noticed. The Colts came calling, and Facyson saw an opportunity to turn his limited role in Las Vegas into a starting spot in Indianapolis. But sometimes, opportunity can deceive. Away from the energy of Raider Nation and the locker room that supported his rise, Facyson couldn't replicate what he had built. Whether it was pressure, scheme struggles, or confidence issues, something changed. And by the end of the year, his once bright NFL future looked dimmer than ever. For Facyson, Leaving the Raiders wasn't the next step up. It was the beginning of a steady fall that no one saw coming. Marcus Williams. It wasn't a headline-making injury. There were no sirens, no dramatic stretcher exit. Just a moment. A single punch, a torn jersey, and Marcus Williams' NFL career was over. In 2003, Williams was a tight end trying to survive training camp with the Oakland Raiders. As an undrafted free agent, he had no margin for error. Every snap, every drill, every moment on the field was a fight for survival. But one fight went too far. During a heated practice, Williams got into an altercation with fellow tight end Mondreal Fulcher. Tempers flared. Words turned to fists. Fulcher punched Williams hard, enough to tear his jersey and injure his shoulder. The damage ended his shot at making the roster. Williams did something few NFL players have ever done. He took his teammate to court. He sued Fulcher and the Raiders for negligence. In a rare legal victory for a player, Marcus Williams won the case. A jury awarded him over $340,000 in damages.
But justice didn't bring a second chance. Williams never played another snap in the NFL. After just 14 games and a promising start, his career was dead in the water. He disappeared from the league as quietly as he entered it. There were no press conferences, no retirement announcements, just silence. What makes his story so tragic isn't just the injury, it's how quickly everything unraveled. Williams wasn't a superstar, but he was climbing. He had earned his shot on grit alone. In a league where undrafted players have to fight twice as hard, he had made it through the hardest part. Then, in one moment, it was gone. His name never made the headlines, but in Raiders history, Marcus Williams is a symbol of how brutal and unforgiving the league can be, not just from the opponents across the line, but sometimes from the man in the same jersey, Patrick Bates. By the time Patrick Bates was drafted in the first round of the 1993 NFL Draft, expectations were sky high. He was a natural athlete, a dominant safety, a high school All-American. At Texas A&M, he hit like a truck and covered the field like a shadow. Scouts saw flashes of Ronnie Lott. The Raiders saw a defensive centerpiece, so they picked him 12th overall, hoping to build their secondary around his explosive talent. But what followed wasn't greatness. It was chaos. Almost immediately, things began to unravel. Bates clashed with coaches, he missed practices, he struggled to adjust to the NFL's speed and complexity. But it wasn't just what happened on the field, it was everything off it. Arrests, legal trouble, a reputation for being unreliable. The Raiders grew frustrated. They had gambled on a raw but gifted player. What they got was unpredictability. After just 2 seasons, Oakland gave up. They traded him to the Atlanta Falcons. It was a quiet exit for someone who was once supposed to be the next big thing. In Atlanta, the problems didn't stop. Bates played just 17 games in 2 seasons. Then, he was out of the league. Completely. No farewell, no second chance, no comeback. Years later, his name appeared again, but for all the wrong reasons. In 2005, Yahoo Sports listed Patrick Bates as the 37th biggest draft bust in NFL history. That number wasn't just a ranking, it was a scar, a reminder of how far he'd fallen from where he was supposed to go. Some blamed injuries, others pointed to poor support systems. But in the end, Bates himself admitted he wasn't ready for the fame, the pressure, or the responsibility that came with being a Raider. The fall wasn't sudden. It was slow, quiet, and complete. From a first-round pick to a forgotten name, Patrick Bates became a cautionary tale, one that still echoes in draft rooms today. Kwame Harris. He came to the Raiders with a new contract and a second chance. By the end of the season, he was gone, cut, criticized, and never given another shot in the NFL. For Kwame Harris, leaving his former team meant redemption. Instead, it marked the beginning of the end.
In 2008, the Oakland Raiders signed Harris to a multi-million-dollar deal, hoping to fix a crumbling offensive line. They needed toughness, consistency, leadership. But Harris brought the opposite. Game after game, he racked up penalties, false starts, holding calls, missed blocks. His inconsistency wasn't just frustrating, it was costly. Fans quickly lost patience, coaches benched him, and by the end of that season, he was gone. He was released quietly, with no real headlines, no farewells, just one disappointing year, and a career that suddenly hit a wall. But before the fall, there was promise. Harris had been a first-round draft pick in 2003, taken 26th overall by the San Francisco 49ers. A Stanford graduate, highly intelligent, big frame, strong hands, he was supposed to be a long-term protector on the left side of the line. His years with the 49ers were rocky. He started dozens of games, but never quite developed into a dominant force. He struggled against top pass rushers, sometimes looking overmatched. After 5 seasons, San Francisco let him walk. That's when the Raiders stepped in, hoping a change of scenery would unlock his potential. Didn't. By 2009, Harris was out of football completely. He never signed with another team. A few years later, he resurfaced in the headlines for personal reasons, not sports. His story faded from the NFL spotlight, tucked away in lists of forgotten draft picks and failed signings. For Raiders fans, he's remembered as one of the most disappointing additions of that era, a player with talent, size, and pedigree, who couldn't put it all together when it mattered most. Hunter Renfrow. He was once the Raiders' most dependable receiver. Hunter Renfrow was a ghost. He sat out the season, unsigned and unwanted. Teams had questions. Was he still healthy? Could he still separate? Could he ever be the same? When the Carolina Panthers finally gave him a shot in 2024, it wasn't a headline. It was a gamble. A quiet signing, low risk, low expectations. But for Renfrow, it was more than that. It was a last chance. Not long ago, things looked very different. In 2021, Renfrow was the Raiders' breakout star. He made the Pro Bowl with over 1,000 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. He was clutch, precise, and had one of the safest pairs of hands in the NFL. Fans called him Third and Renfrow for good reason.
But when the coaching staff changed, everything unraveled. Josh McDaniels arrived with a new system and different preferences. Suddenly, Renfrow didn't fit. His role shrank. His targets dropped. His snaps were cut. Then came the concussions. Quiet, subtle, but enough to keep him on the sidelines and make coaches nervous. And with every missed game, his value dropped. By 2023, he was barely in the playbook. The chemistry was gone. The Raiders tried to shop him. No one bid. He stayed on the roster, but didn't make noise. His contract ended quietly. No press conference, no farewell. Just silence. Now with the Panthers, he's fighting for relevance. Not fame, not stats, just a role. Something to prove he still belongs in the league. The fall wasn't dramatic. It wasn't public. It was slow, quiet, and painful. The kind that creeps up before anyone realizes it's happening. And that's what makes Hunter Renfrow's story different. He didn't go out swinging. He faded out, step by step, until one of the NFL's most reliable receivers was suddenly disposable. No one expected it, least of all him. Darren Waller. He was once one of the most feared tight ends in the league. Strong, fast, and nearly impossible to cover. But after leaving the Raiders, Darren Waller's path took a turn no one expected. Not into another Pro Bowl season, but into early retirement and a surprising move into the world of music. After a promising start with the Raiders, Waller quickly rose through the ranks as one of the league's top tight ends. In both 2019 and 2020, he recorded over 1,000 yards receiving, a rare feat for a tight end and a testament to his size, speed, and hands. He was Derek Carr's favorite target and a cornerstone of the Raiders' offense. The team and its fans saw him as more than just a player. He was a symbol of redemption. After all, Waller had fought back from substance abuse issues that nearly ended his career with the Ravens before it ever got going. But after 2021, things started to shift. Injuries began to pile up. Hamstring issues, knee trouble, missed games. It all added up. His performance dipped. In 2023, the Raiders traded Waller to the New York Giants, hoping he'd rediscover his old form. He didn't. The injuries continued, and the fire that once drove him on the field seemed to fade. Eventually, he walked away from the game entirely. Then came the twist. Instead of planning a return or taking on a coaching role like many former players, Waller chose to focus on music, a career in rap. He released tracks, music videos, and even said publicly that music had become his new passion. His retirement, made official in 2024, shocked fans and drew mixed reactions across the league. By the time the Dolphins traded for his rights in 2025, it was too late. Waller was done with football. The man who once dominated the middle of the field had already moved on, leaving behind a career that promised greatness but ended in silence. Josh Jacobs. It started with frustration, not with his performance, but with how he was valued. Josh Jacobs, one of the brightest talents to come out of the Raiders' backfield in recent years, didn't leave the team in disgrace or decline. He left feeling disrespected. Jacobs had been the heart of the Raiders' offense. Drafted in the first round in 2019, he made an immediate impact with over 1,000 rushing yards in each of his first 2 seasons. By 2022, he led the entire NFL in rushing yards, proving that he wasn't just a good back, he was elite. But when it came time to negotiate a long-term contract, the Raiders hesitated. They offered him what many called a team-friendly deal. Jacobs saw it differently. He saw it as a lack of appreciation. He played the 2023 season under the franchise tag, grinding through injuries and heavy carries. When the season ended, so did his patience. He walked, signing with the Green Bay Packers, but things didn't go as planned. The move, which was supposed to give him a fresh start and new energy, quickly turned sour. Injuries followed, production slipped, and most surprisingly, Jacobs opened up about his frustrations not just with the Raiders, but with the entire culture of the team. He questioned the leadership, the locker room mentality, and the direction of the organization he once carried on his back. For many fans, it was a hard pill to swallow. Jacobs had been a homegrown talent, someone who embodied the Raiders' spirit. But his public criticism after leaving the team put a cloud over his legacy. In Green Bay, he was no longer the focal point. He was part of a system that didn't seem built for him. His story isn't one of legal issues or shocking collapse. It's more subtle, a case of a star fading after walking away from the team that made him a star in the first place. What do all of these stories have in common? They weren't just about stats or contracts. They were about pride, pressure, and poor decisions. Whether it was off-field drama, devastating injuries, or the weight of their own expectations, each of these 10 players faced a turning point after leaving the Raiders. And for most of them, that turning point led downhill. Some were stars when they wore silver and black. Some were rising names. A few never quite lived up to their potential. But the moment they left, everything unraveled. From legal battles and failed comebacks to damaged reputations and forgotten legacies, their paths tell a powerful story.
It reminds us that success inside the Raiders organization doesn't always travel with you. The system, the fan base, the identity, it's not something easily replaced. Once they stepped away, many of these men found that what made them great wasn't as strong as they thought. For these 10, leaving was supposed to be the next big step, a contract, a new team, a better future. Instead, it led to ruin. If you found these stories eye-opening, make sure to like this video and subscribe to History of Raiders. We're just getting started, and there are many more forgotten names, hidden scandals, and untold stories from Raider history still to come. Thanks for watching.